From inside a radio booth at M&T Bank Stadium, it is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer live on a Sunday in early December to break down the Ravens' 24-19 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles as they head into the bye feeling all kinds of out of sorts. We're going to break down a rough day for the Ravens offense, what went wrong against this Eagles defense, Justin Tucker having another nightmare day, and then we'll take a look ahead at where this Ravens team stands as they head into the bye. But first, Banner Ravens podcast is brought to you by Toyota. Toyota has been building a legacy of excellence for years, from developing hybrid technology to upping the standards of safety and efficiency. Toyota is always innovating, always making progress. And with a superior lineup of in-stock SUVs, including the adventure-ready RAV4 and capable, affordable Corolla Cross, you can experience the legacy of Toyota for yourself. Visit buyatoyota.com, the official website for deals, to find out more. Toyota, let's go places. Jonas, we're going to get to our word of the day in just a bit, but when we look at this Ravens loss that sends them to 8-5 on the season, as I drop my phone, as is fitting on a day like this, this game had so much of a deja vu feeling, because the Ravens, as good as they have been the last two seasons, they keep losing games in the same way. I had the notion in this game as they were getting into the fourth quarter that it felt a lot like the AFC Championship game loss to the Kansas City Chiefs that was 11 months ago. It felt a lot like the loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road. It felt a little bit like the loss to the Las Vegas Raiders. Ravens go up 9-0 in this game, and they proceed to squander the lead. A horrible day from Justin Tucker, a mediocre to not great day from Lamar Jackson, and the offense, once again, finds the worst possible time to go quiet.
I guess I would push back on that in the sense that some of those games you mentioned, most of those games you mentioned, and maybe all those games you mentioned, you could plausibly argue that the Ravens were by far the more talented team on the field that day. And, this Eagles team, very deep,
it's a good team,
full of stars, missing a couple guys that will not make the Ravens feel any better about the result today. No Darius Slay, lose Reed Blankenship, not exactly a star. No Devontae Smith. So I don't know that this is a classic Ravens loss in the Ravens Twitter sense. It was a game that, sure, the statistics will not make you feel better about it, because the Ravens finished with close to 370 yards or something. Jalen Hurts had less than 120 yards. Saquon Barkley had a nice game, but nothing that I think will boost his MVP candidacy. So it just was a game where, I guess it was classic Ravens in the sense that they didn't take their chances. But I don't know. To me, this is a weird game that kind of stands alone because of where it is in the schedule, who it was that they're going to get up against. John Harbaugh himself said on Wednesday that you could make the argument that this Eagles team was playing like the best team in the NFL. And there were certainly a lot of the Eagles fans here today to neuter some of that home field advantage. So how many of these games where the Ravens kind of leave their fans to rue what could have been, have they been, trailing by double digits in the fourth quarter? It was just a very, very weird type of game where, sure, they didn't deserve to be down by double digits, but there they were. And at no point, maybe past the 10-minute mark in the fourth quarter, did you realistically think that there was a chance that the Ravens would come back? And in every single one of those games that you mentioned, the Chiefs game, the Raiders game, the Browns game, you felt like it was only a matter of time before someone did something and put the Ravens within reach of victory.
I guess I felt a little bit more hopeless, I guess, in the AFC Championship game loss because of all the times that they shot themselves in the foot.
And I guess they were down by double digits in that one.
Yeah. Like the Zay Flowers fumble on the 1-yard line, like the Isaiah Likely pick, a target, and then Lamar Jackson pick that kind of sealed it in that one. This one, you were heading into the fourth quarter, and the offense hadn't done anything since the first quarter, and it felt like the momentum had completely shifted. But I think that's fair. I mean, I think the Eagles are an incredibly talented team, despite missing Devontae Smith and Darius Slay. You've had this kind of sense of doom where it felt like the offense was never going to be able to get their feet back under them. And it was one step forward from the defense and two steps back from the other two units. The offense took a step back, obviously going up against maybe the best defense in the NFL. so far, and the defense, and the special teams, I should say, took a step back as well. Word of the day, though, is unreliable. Definition: not reliable, not to be relied upon.
What would you say the antonym of unreliable is?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unreliable, disunreliable. First known usage, 1830 to 1840. Of course, it comes from the word reliable. That word describes Justin Tucker at this point, because we'd be burying the lead if we didn't start with Justin Tucker's horrific day. A couple weeks after that awful day, you thought things could not get any worse, when he struggled in Pittsburgh and essentially loses the team the game. Today, he misses 3 kicks. He misses an extra point, and he misses 2 field goals, one from 47, one from 53. He is now 19 for 27. That's just 17% on field goal attempts this year. He is 42 for 44 on extra points. I don't know what else to say other than Justin Tucker. This is not the same Justin Tucker that we have seen for the past decade.
Maybe he's allergic to teams from Pennsylvania. Are we open to that possibility?
No, I don't think there's anything in the water.
And it was so close to Justin Tucker having just like the best weekend of anyone in the NFL, because his beloved Texas Longhorns going to College Station last night, and for the first time, meeting against the Aggies since he was playing for Texas, and beat Texas A&M on a game-winning kick to put that series into hiatus. Texas goes and gets the win, basically, stamps their college football playoff bona fides. You come in here, and what does he do with his first chance to kick a ball through the uprights, going off the left uprights? I mean,
he
that kind of you don't want to.
The first field goal, I will say.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's
his
true.
second kick he missed.
Yeah, an important distinction.
Yeah.
But we're just having the same conversation over and over again. John Harbaugh wanted to make clear when he was asked in so many words post game whether the team was planning on moving on from Justin Tucker, that no, the team is not planning on moving on from Justin Tucker. But what this 2-week break does give you is the opportunity to examine every possible recourse that you have. That's, not just probing the film, making sure everything is there mentally right with Justin, but it's also, combing through the waiver wire list. It's combing through the list of guys who might be ready to come in and try out. And, obviously you can't expect really any one of those guys who's on the street right now to come in and be better than like 82, 85% field goal kicker. But guess what? That's better than what Justin Tucker is right now.
Yeah, 70% is worst in the league among guys who have had that many attempts. John Harbaugh might not have a better option. I mean, you can comb through the waiver wire and see who's on the street, but there's no guarantee that anybody you bring in is going to be better. And you are already now at the point where to even have this conversation before the season would have seemed blasphemous. But we are at the point now where we have to have this conversation about bringing somebody in. And do you go through the bye and have them do a kickoff? Like you try to just figure out which of these two guys you want to go in with. And then beyond that, if he does end up being benched, like we've seen with other high-priced veterans like Marcus Williams, what do you do after that? Brian McFarland, who's great with the Ravens cap stuff, was bringing up the fact that Justin Tucker has $7.517 million in dead cap for next year if he's released, which is $445,000 more than he's presently accounted for. There's not really a moving on from a guy who's 35. You don't want your kicker taking up $7 million in cap space. And it's upsetting to have this conversation, because this is a guy who has given this franchise so much over the last 10 years. And to talk about him like he is just another guy who is coming in here and underperforming, he has earned the right to have our trust over the years. He's earned the right to be discussed as one of the best Ravens of all time. But we're at the point now where this Ravens team is 8-5. They need to win games down the stretch if they want to try to win the division. And obviously they're going to be in the playoffs. And he's costing them games right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is beside the point, but it is so weird now to look into our own, reporter crystal balls right now and imagine that whenever the season ends and there are, 4 games left, plus however many playoff games we think the Ravens will get to, that at some point when we get to talk to Eric DeCosta, whether it's the season-ending news conference or, the pre-com or the combine availability, at some point he will be asked about the Ravens' chances of taking a kicker.
Yep.
that's just where we are right now. And that would have been such a laughable question as to, have you mocked by Eric DaCosta, by other media members, by fans who are listening in on Twitter. But right now, that is where we are. We're at DEFCON 5, 1.
What's the highest number? Yeah. Well, DEFCON 1. Doesn't it go down?
Yeah,
No?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. It's just, you were there in the locker room talking to him. I guess we should say that on at least one of those kicks, the snap did seem a little bit high. That has been an issue. The conditions out here weren't exactly pristine with the cold and with the wet. But what was the prevailing mood from Justin Tucker down there?
It was pretty shell shocked, I would say, and I give him credit because time and time again he has spoken after this. He said he hates having to have this conversation multiple times over the course of a season, but it wasn't like he had a magic bullet. In previous press conferences, previous media availabilities, he talked about drifting to the left because up until tonight, he had missed every one of his misses had been wide left, to the point where I turned to you in the press box and said, has there ever been precedent in NFL history for a guy with this many attempts missing all of his kicks in one direction? Then he missed wide right. There was nothing, there were no easy answers that he could provide. He just said flatly, I missed the kicks. And he said he felt like he cost the team the game. He's hoping that the bye is going to be a reset for him. But he took responsibility. He just didn't have a solid answer. He just left it at, I missed the kicks, and this is a job where you got to either make them or miss them.
Yeah, just an ugly day for special teams in general.
I think it wasn't just him.
That the best help that the Ravens got in special teams was from Eagles committing penalties, and obviously you give credit for putting the Ravens credit for putting themselves in positions where Keely Ringo twice out there had to do whatever he did that drew a flag, but Tylan Wallace muffs one punt, fumbles another that he's fortunate to recover. Jordan Stout twice seemed extremely unhappy with how the ball came off his foot,
as he should have been.
His best punt seemed like it was kicked well outside of his coverage, and the Ravens had good punt coverage on that, so it wasn't it wasn't something that came back to bite them. I guess they also had the nice return by what's his face?
Britton Covey?
No, the Ravens did.
Oh, Rasheen Ali.
Rasheen Ali, excuse me. That set them up. But even that, what they ended up coming up with nothing on that drive right before halftime, right?
I think so. That was, they come down the field, and right before halftime, actually they kicked.
They made Justin Tucker made the 50-yarder.
Yeah,
okay. To bring it to 12-14.
That's right. Okay, so they did get something out of that drive.
Yeah.
But also Tylan Wallace, in addition to muffing the two punts, one of which I believe was called back because they recovered both anyway, but the first one was called back because of a penalty. Yeah. Also let one ball be downed inside the 1 and another ball be downed at the 5-yard line.
Yeah.
This is a John Harbaugh coach team. Special teams should not be a problem, and they are consistently a problem.
And it's got to cut extra deep for John that this was against an Eagles organization where he made his bones as what?
The special
teams coordinator.
Look, this wasn't all on Justin Tucker. This wasn't all on the special teams. The offense had so many issues today against this Eagles defense. Didn't start out looking that way because they come right down the field pretty early. They score a touchdown in the first quarter. They had 3 possessions in that first quarter as the defense kept giving them opportunities. And you thought maybe this offense was going to be able to score some points. Zay Flowers looked like he was on pace for an outstanding day. Lamar Jackson, we'll get into Zay and the wideouts in a bit, but Lamar Jackson finishes 23 for 36, 237 yards, 2 touchdowns. I guess the good thing is you could say he has set his own bar so high that anything below an MVP caliber performance we're disappointed. This was pretty well below an MVP caliber performance today. He extended plays. He used his legs at times. He missed a lot of passes today. I would say that this was one of his worst games of the season. He padded his stats with that final drive at the end of regulation that, they come right down the field and they score the touchdown, but basically with no time left. But once Rashad Bateman comes out of this game, the offense went from struggling to all of a sudden inept. They could not find anything going. And all of the Derrick Henry runs the Eagles were sitting on, Lamar didn't even seem to trust his legs at times when he could have scrambled for more yards. He could have taken off. He had more opportunities. And then he had a very odd, he kept the media waiting for quite a while in the post-game press conference. He had kind of an odd, frustrated press conference as well to cap this one.
Yeah, probably the best twinning of those two angles was him acknowledging that his mom, Felicia, I believe, was quote cussing him out post game, getting on him for not scrambling perhaps as much as he should have. I didn't think that there was as many, turn down opportunities. Maybe there were lanes in the fourth quarter where I was kind of had my head in my laptop writing, but he did finally scramble in that second half. That was his first scramble since week 10, which is kind of unbelievable.
That's crazy
for a guy who has so much juice in the open field. And he finished with how many yards? A good amount of yards in this one. He had 8 carries for 79 yards. Not a lot of it, I think, was designed. So probably at least 50 yards on scrambles, right? And people probably was hoping it was closer to 70 or 80. That's something that we're going to have to look back at the tape. Something also we're going to have to go back and look at the tape that now just such a crucial miss to Isaiah Likely on that third drive. They had things moving. Isaiah Likely comes open on the post route, the drag route, not the post, the corner route, the drag route, the deep cross, whatever it was, and didn't see a lot of great replays on the broadcast version. Couldn't really tell, watching it live, but it seemed like Isaiah Likely slowed down a little bit, and that affected where Lamar put the ball. Ends up overshooting him. The Ravens end up doing nothing with that drive, and that was, kind of going to that play the high water mark for the passing offense. And they didn't really get things going until that last drive where they, had the kind of window dressing touchdown. And you can't really put too much stock into that, considering just how passive the Eagles were and the fact that they were missing a couple guys.
Yeah, and there was the missed pass when the Ravens were down by their own end zone when they still had a 9-0 lead, where he had Zay Flowers open in the flat and just threw the ball at his feet. It's hard to tell. He was frustrated, obviously, after that, but we don't know exactly what went wrong there. Even some of his passes that were hauled in. I mean, Mark Andrews had a spectacular day, even though not statistically, but he had the touchdown, which was honestly a good play by Lamar Jackson, extends the play, just keeps backing up and then fires a dart into the end zone. Mark Andrews leaps up and makes that catch. In the third quarter, one of the drives that ended in a missed field goal, he throws over the middle to Mark Andrews, who makes
on third and
long, makes an acrobatic catch over the middle. Pass probably could have been better thrown, but Andrews has shown time and time again he's going to jump up and get those balls. I just didn't think it was a very strong day, and for a Eagles defense that was missing Darius Slay, one of their top corners, this was a chance for Lamar to take a little bit more advantage of them. I guess the good thing is he's still not turning the ball over. He had a fumble, but it was recovered by Ronnie Stanley.
And a dropped interception.
But he has suddenly gone from MVP favorite to on the outside looking in. I mean, I still think he would probably get a top 5 vote, a top 3 vote if I were voting in this category. I'm not. But he has now kind of set himself back in that kind of conversation because he just has not been up to the standard that he set for himself.
Yeah, I mean the narrative weight of this game can't be overstated because the Ravens lost, Lamar wasn't great, and as we stand, as we sit here, 9:13 p.m. Eastern time, the Buffalo Bills are beating the San Francisco 49ers 14-3, and Josh Allen, I'm sure, has at least one score. Nope, no score.
No, he doesn't.
No score. Only 4 for 5 for 31 yards, but it doesn't matter because if they win, people will ascribe probably the excellence of this Bills team to Josh Allen, and Lamar will not be able to do anything for the next 2 weeks, but he doesn't care about the MVP. But if you care about the MVP, there's nothing that he can do, nothing that the Ravens can do to help his case, but hope that others in the running for this award fall flat.
Yeah.
And, it seems like if this is the floor for Saquon Barkley in terms of output, then it's a pretty nice floor. I still don't think this result itself would sway a flip-floppy voter between Lamar Jackson and Saquon Barkley, because Saquon had a nice put-away run, but he did not leave his mark on this game in the same way that he did against the Rams or in a lot of other games. So I think those two guys kind of fought to a stalemate, but obviously only one of those guys plays for a team that has 2 losses. And the narrative heft that I think we ascribe to teams that are powerhouses at the top of their division can't be overlooked. Also can't be overlooked is I think just the pass blocking. I tweeted this, and I think it's pretty representative of where the Ravens, are going to have to shore things up for this stretch run, for this potential playoff run. They've allowed a 40 plus pressure rate in 4 games this season. Against the Bengals in week 5, they won that. The loss against the Browns in week 8, the loss to the Steelers in week 11, and today 56.8% of Lamar's dropbacks were pressured, and Philly blitzed him less than 14% of the time.
For a defensive front that was without Brandon Graham and without Bryce Huff.
Yeah. So I think it starts there. I think Derrick Henry was able to do. I think he had a pretty good game. The zone runs gave him some opportunities to find holes and hit them. I think the Ravens did an okay job blocking and run blocking, considering just what they were up against. But Patrick McCary looked overwhelmed at times. Daniel Lilly got overwhelmed at times. Ronnie Stanley probably would have allowed a sack on that Zach Bond half sack, which I think maybe he got credit for half a sack. Maybe that was also Lamar's fault for drifting as far back as he did. But if someone's in your face, then what are you going to do besides fade back? There was a play where the entire right side of the line just got beat instantly, and Justice Hill took the interior pass rusher, but Roger Rosengarten still couldn't beat his guy. And I think Lamar got tracked down from behind for a sack or for a 0-yard loss. So some of the familiar concerns and ills of this Ravens pass blocking unit kind of came back. And I don't know how much of that is because they didn't have Charlie Kolar in there as, a more flexible chess piece that you need for some of these more fearsome pass rushing units, but there just wasn't a lot of options. And the fact that Lamar, until the end of this game, until that final drive, was settling for checkdowns because he didn't feel like there was anything downfield, and he probably didn't feel comfortable holding on to the ball longer than he was, I think said a lot about where he was in this game mentally.
This offensive line can't be a Charlie Kolar away from having a terrible day. There was the one play at the end of the first half where there's 31 seconds left, and the Ravens are in Eagles territory. They're out of timeouts, and I joked that the Ravens had to avoid a situation like Matt Eberflus and the Bears did at the end of that game on Thanksgiving and avoid a sack. Lamar Jackson gets sacked. And because the refs blow the whistle and call an incomplete pass, there's only a 10-second runoff and not this crazy mad scramble to get over the ball and run one more play, spike it, throw an incomplete pass in order to set up the field goal. That was exactly what could not happen at that moment.
It's also, I believe, exactly what happened. What was it? Second quarter, third quarter of that AFC Championship game against the Chiefs. Remember, they were in Chiefs territory. The one thing the Ravens could not afford to do was take a sack. They took a sack.
Yeah, and it was poorly timed. Just like this protection unit can't be a Charlie Kolar injury away from being awful, this weapons group cannot be a Rashad Bateman injury away from being awful. Zay Flowers not having a catch in the second half for what feels like.
Yeah, this is probably the weirdest splits, the weirdest split in the NFL. Zay Flowers in the first half this season, in the first half of games this season, 584 yards. Do you want to take a gander at what his second half receiving totals are?
Well, he went over 800 today, so it's got to be between 200 and 300.
279 yards. That's
why?
I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know if there's such an overcorrection from Lamar or from opposing defensive coordinators that this disappearing hack continues to happen, but it happens in all of the best Zay Flowers games. I mean, like it's now 2 or 3 times now, right, where he's gone over 100 yards. It didn't happen today, but 100 yards in a first half, and then was not heard from again in the second half. And it didn't matter because I think the Ravens, for the most part, were able to carry the day offensively and win those games without needing a huge game. But the scrutiny and the microscope gets a little bit more intense when you are going up against a team that has as much talent as the Eagles do, for sure. And then also if you don't have your Robin next to you. I mean, Rashad Bateman not targeted at all in the first half. Saw him limp off in the second, on that first or second drive. Didn't see him go into the medical tent. So I guess that's a good sign that he wasn't requesting the Ravens medical staff to, kind of do the whatever you want to call it,
treatment.
the treatment to detect maybe if there are some loose bodies in that knee, if there's anything messed up with its cartilage.
Right.
So you hope that the soreness that John Harbaugh told us was so severe that Bateman couldn't be back on the field is just, I don't know,
Yep.
playing on this grass, or maybe there was some kind of contusion or whatever that he's dealing with that just made it impossible for him to get comfortable. But we're kind of back to where we have been in years past, where you're wondering, is the Ravens lead receiver and Mark Andrews enough to carry the day when the rushing game is good but not great?
Yeah, it's not a good sign that Rashad Bateman was ruled out mid-game, that he wasn't just questionable to return and didn't return, that he was ruled out that early. But when the Ravens traded for Deontay Johnson with a week to go before the trade deadline, we said this is a great insurance policy if, God forbid, the Ravens lose Zay Flowers or Rashad Bateman. They lost Rashad Bateman in this game. Did Deontay Johnson play a single snap?
I don't think he did.
What did John Harbaugh say in the press conference, because you were in that press conference, about Deontay Johnson not being in this game?
He was speaking about it as if there were red tape over the situation, and not red medical tape. This was a thorny bit of coach speak, just explaining that there will come a day soon when we will have a more extensive elaboration on what exactly the circumstances were. It wasn't like, for people whose mind already leaps to, oh, there must be something criminal. We checked case search. There's nothing on case search as far as I can tell. Case search is, of course, the Maryland registry of pending criminal offenses. He was in the locker room, so it wasn't like he was blackballed by the team.
He was active.
He was active. He was definitely active. That the mind wonders, the mind reels, because of all of the similar circumstances. I guess there's really only one, but Jess Rebeck reporting that Eddie Jackson got cut not long after he had a blow up with certain Ravens staff members. And I don't know if something like this happened, but because of what we knew about Deontay Johnson beforehand, and because of what we've seen from him in the locker room, where he's been a little bit emotional at times, you just wonder, what exactly happened. And if they cut him on, Monday, which who knows what their plans are. I don't. I think at this point you can't afford to cut him because of what Rashad Bateman's uncertainty kind of lends to this whole situation. But somehow the Deontay situation went from bad to worse, and at the worst possible time.
Somebody who came into this organization having started out the season pretty well for the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah.
Ravens didn't have to trade much to get him, and we were among the media members that was saying this looks like a no-brainer. And yet he has, one catch, I believe, with the Ravens so far?
Yeah, I think one catch on 5 targets.
And does not play in a game where they absolutely need him. Puzzling, confounding. Let's talk about the defense, because the defense actually did take us another step forward. And I said before this game, they played well against the Steelers. They played well against the Chargers. They needed to play well against this Eagles offense. Offense was without Devontae Smith. They started out the game great. There were some gaps and there were some flubs later on in the game, but they didn't let A.J. Brown kill them necessarily. I believe A.J. Brown finished with about 5 catches for 66 yards.
Yep.
The Eagles did a lot of damage to their own offense by committing 6 penalties in the first quarter and 7 penalties in the first half. For once, the Ravens were not the more penalized team in a matchup. Ravens finished with just 4 penalties. They held Jalen Hurts to just 118 passing yards. He got some on the ground, but all in all, I'd say a very encouraging performance from this defense. And suddenly the script has flipped. The script has flipped to the point where early in the season we were saying, just if this defense can give you, be 15th best in the NFL. They don't even have to be elite. They don't even have to be great. If they are just fine, then this team can win the Super Bowl because of how good this offense is. And suddenly this defense is playing good to very good, and the offense and special teams are not carrying their weight.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you step back and just think about like how many things had to go wrong for a team that got 372 yards of total offense, had just 4 penalties total, held Jalen Hurts to 118 yards passing, held Saquon Barkley under 5 yards a carry, and if not for an Isaiah Likely garbage time touchdown, would have lost this game by 12 points.
It was the same conversation that we had after the Steelers game. How do you lose a game where you don't allow a touchdown? How do you lose a game where the opposing quarterback has 118 passing yards?
Yeah. I mean, credit to the Eagles coaching staff. I think they had some that they definitely out executed and probably outwitted the Ravens at certain points. That Dallas Goedert touchdown, a nice bit of screening action from I think AJ Brown on the left side to free Dallas Goedert enough and disrupt that angle that Kyle Hamilton had on him, where Goddard was able to run in for the touchdown. Late in the second half, they really found something with that up-tempo approach where maybe they were kind of targeting certain Ravens defenders they wanted to keep on the field, limit the Ravens substitution game. And they definitely took it to the Ravens with some of their read option stuff. And then, that put away drive in the fourth quarter, I think that was just a kind of camel that straw that broke the camel's back type of drive. You just, this Eagles offensive line is so good and Saquon Barkley is so strong that at a certain point, the dam was bound to break. I mean, I think it's a credit to both the Ravens and the Eagles that the longest run that the Ravens have allowed all year was that 25-yard touchdown pass to Saquon. I think they'd allowed one other run by a running back of over 20 yards coming into today. So, you wondered how anyone could stop this Eagles rushing attack. I think we saw a pretty good example of how to do it. You limit the explosives, keep things manageable, put Jalen Hurts in situations where he's going to have the ball in his hand. I mean, I think probably no bigger compliment to the Ravens run defense that they basically cowed the Eagles out of going for a tush push on 3rd and 1. And the Ravens don't just get the stop, but they push them backwards and, discourage them from even thinking about a 4th and 1 tush push. So I don't think that there's anything that the Ravens have to hang their head about defensively. Marlon Humphrey feels like they're starting to turn a corner. Obviously, we talked about that in Friday's pod. We wrote about it last week. There's good stuff to feel good about. To do this without Kyle Van Noy, to do this with probably not a 100%, Roquan Smith, to do this after 13 weeks of just pounding your body in games with oftentimes a lot of plays. Some of this is probably on both sides just attributable to the fact that the Ravens are a lot more worn down than a lot of teams that they've played on their schedule. And maybe this bye week coming up is going to be a little bit of a silver bullet just in terms of refreshing their bodies, reinvigorating their mind, just putting more gas in the tank. But it's definitely frustrating for the Ravens again that a good effort on defense is not rewarded with a good effort on offense or special teams.
Right. I mean, I thought the front seven overall, you mentioned Roquan, first game back from that injury, he looked great out there. I thought this was one of the best, games that he had.
11 tackles, first half sack of the season.
Yeah.
One quarterback hit. Yeah.
Tavius Robinson, I thought, made some nice plays in this game. He chased down Travis Jones, chased down Jalen Hurts when Hurts was scrambling up the middle. That's kind of a hard play for a guy to make.
Especially a guy with a not quite 100% ankle.
Yeah. I thought the front seven was great. And honestly.
And they did it without Mike Pierce.
Right. Still without Michael Pierce, who could be activated once they come back from the bye. So that was encouraging, certainly, but just frustrating that, like you said, that the offense wasn't there. But at least the Ravens, kept their streak of not getting blown out. That's how many games in a row that they have either won or lost by one possession or less, going back to 2022. Right?
I mean, it's been a while since a Lamar Jackson led team was blown out. That they lost by 10 in 2022 to the Browns. I think 13-3. They got cooked by the Bengals in that weird COVID inflicted injury ridden like Christmas Day or Christmas Eve game in 2021. But yeah, for a while, this was set up to be probably the worst defeat of the Lamar Jackson era until that late Isaiah Likely touchdown.
Big picture now, the Pittsburgh Steelers won their shootout over the Cincinnati Bengals where Russell Wilson had like 420 passing yards. Ridiculous. That Bengals defense, I think we can officially put a fork in the Bengals. So now the Ravens are back to a game and a half back of the Steelers as they head into their bye. It's another steep climb to try to get back into the divisional race. What does the New York Times playoff picture have for us in terms of the crystal ball, Jonas?
As the ambassador for liberal media outposts, the New York Times says the Steelers have a 62% chance of winning the division. I think that's a little bit higher than I expected, but maybe that's just because of how thoroughly they beat the Bengals today. So some juice from that. And then the Ravens are down to 38%. And obviously, this was a situation where coming into today, the Ravens were the favorites. So, this is just kind of the horse race, electoral type tracking.
Swings.
It's going to go back and forth with every game. But if you're the Ravens, don't take any chances. You got to win. You got to win them all. It's definitely a manageable slate with the Giants, who are going to be minus their starting quarterback, minus Dexter Lawrence, minus Azeez Ojulari. We don't know what kind of mind frame Malik Neighbors is going to be in, although if he's anything like the other wide receiver ones that the Ravens have faced this year, he'll probably feel good about playing this Ravens defense.
How bummed were you that the Ravens did not end up with Daniel Jones? I was on the floor. I was devastated.
I mean, we haven't had a situation yet where it's been like a heart in the throat moment for Lamar, wondering if he's going to get up.
Yeah.
So
I just wanted to talk backup quarterbacks. I did. It'll make the bye week so much more interesting.
And they get the Browns, and they get the Steelers, and they get the Texans. Obviously, not in that order. So a realistic chance of them going 4-0, certainly. The Steelers have quite the finishing kick here with a bunch of divisional games. They also have the Eagles. They have the Chiefs. So I think the Steelers end of season slate is probably tougher than the Ravens, but they also have a 1.5 game lead. So if it comes down to Ravens versus Steelers in Baltimore, that's going to be a very hot ticket. I mean, you saw how much Kelly Green there was here in the stands. Can you imagine just how many terrible towels there will be for a Ravens Steelers game that could decide whether Pittsburgh or Baltimore gets the AFC North title?
Yeah. Speaking of finishing kicks, we are going to have complete coverage on the BaltimoreBanner.com of Justin Tucker's rough day, of everything that went wrong for the Ravens today. You can subscribe $1 for 6 months and follow Jonas on Twitter. Not yet Blue Sky, dragging him there. I'm on Blue Sky. At Jonas_Shaffer is his Twitter handle. We're at All Banner Sports. I'm at Paul Mancano as well. Gianna Hahn, Kyle Goon will have much, much more in the coming hours and days, and we will keep you apprised of everything bye week related. Despite the fact that the players will not be in the facility, we will have many more conversations. I think we're looking at Wednesday for our next podcast to take stock of where this team is at the bye.
We're bye curious. We're curious about how the bye is going to affect the Ravens.
We're canceling Jonas as well. I'm not sure if he's going to make it to the Week 15 game. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please write us a good review of the Banner Ravens podcast, or tune in live for any of these episodes on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. Thanks so much for all of the social media apps. I counted them up, Jonas. I have to keep track of, I think, 7 social media apps now.
You poor thing.
Exactly. God forbid. Thanks so much for tuning in.